Hello and welcome to Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannon. Today I'm going to review chapter 22 of my newest book, God in Our Superdeterministic Universe, the number one argument for the existence of God. This book is available on Amazon Kindle. Chapter 22 is entitled Synchronicity and Magic Fairy Dust. Dr. Hansen, a theoretical physicist from Sweden, proved that our universe is a static block reality without temporal causation or continuous causation in physics. You can find his proof in the peer-reviewed physics journal Physics Essays, volume 33, number 2, June of 2020, page 216. Now, despite the fact that Dr. Hansen's proof is based on Einstein's special theory of relativity, namely the relativity of simultaneity, which has never been proven wrong in over 100 years. And despite the fact that Dr. Hansen simply utilizes common knowledge of the typical quantum entanglement measurement experiment to establish a theoretical proof that temporal causation is not real, people are still not going to believe this, even though there is no flaw whatsoever in Dr. Hansen's proof. So, how do you explain this disbelief? Well, there's a lot of different reasons for it, but one of the primary reasons is people want to cling to the illusion that free will on Earth exists. Now, it's an illusion because all human beings exist in the universe, and the universe is subject to the laws of physics. Therefore, you can never free yourself from the laws of physics. Therefore, you can never have free will. But under superdeterminism, it's especially difficult because without temporal causation, you could not actually freely choose to do anything that would change a predetermined future. In fact, all your thoughts would be predetermined as well, not free. However, in Dr. Hansen's version of superdeterminism, there is a theory of free will available called cinematism, and I did a video on it. You can watch it. But that version of free will involves God predetermining the existence of our universe to exhibit what God already knows our freely willed decisions would be. So it's a reformulation of free will, but it is still nonetheless free will. You own those acts, even though they are predetermined in our universe. Some people simply do not want there to be a God. So they don't like any argument, especially a great argument like superdeterminism, that God exists. Now, why is that? Various reasons. They don't like God or religious institutions that range from reasons such as lack of religious upbringing, desire to sin unencumbered by Christian morality, belief in other gods or pagan gods, uh, disenchantment with religious organizations or institutions, uh, or disbelief in God for various reasons, scientific, atheistic, or other reasons. Um, some Christians attempt workarounds to avoid the obvious problem that arises under the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which indicates that the universe is the result of a purely random quantum fluctuation. Now, the way around that is superdeterminism, of course. But if you don't want to believe Dr. Hansen, then you may attempt a different sort of workaround, such as some will argue that we see evidence of a divinely guided universe through synchronicity or these coincidences that we experience in life, which seem to indicate there's a greater force or transcendent intelligent power orchestrating what happens. Now, the problem with synchronicity is it relies on coincidences, and random systems are perfectly capable of creating coincidences. So, synchronicity doesn't get you out of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. It doesn't get you out of the idea that the universe is created by a purely random quantum fluctuation. Um, so, as far as synchronicity goes, an atheist could just brush that off as well. Randomness can create coincidences too. It doesn't mean there has to be a divinely intelligent God organizing these seemingly coincidental events. Another workaround is the idea that one's feelings or spiritual experiences prove the existence of God. Um, this is a very powerful workaround because many people believe that what they feel is true. Um, However, feelings are subjective, they only apply to you. They may be sufficient to convince you that there is a God, but they're not objective. You can't transfer them to somebody else and say, hey, here's proof that God exists because I feel that God exists. That's not objective proof. So that sort of workaround has limited value in terms of convincing somebody else that God exists. Whereas superdeterminism is an objective proof. Another workaround is to claim that the body is animated by a ghost or a subsistent form. And that ghost is what gives us consciousness and guarantees our survival after death. One can take advantage of this concept of the consistent form or ghost in the machine and claim it as the source of our free will because it's the source of our conscious thoughts. And because the ghost or subsistent form exists outside the laws of physics, you can claim that it in fact gives you free will. Um, However, superdeterminism disproves the existence of ghosts in the machine or subsistent forms. And this is the reason. Dr. Hansen's version of superdeterminism says that the universe is predetermined, it's a static block reality, it doesn't have temporal causation. Therefore, what's going to happen in the future is predetermined to happen, and you can't change it. There is no mechanism for changing it in physical reality. So, a consequence of that is that, for example, if in the future you are predetermined to move your arm, then your conscious thought to move your arm in the future also has to be predetermined. Since it's your conscious thought that is causing your arm to move, if the movement of your arm is predetermined to occur, then so is your conscious thought, which means your conscious thought also has to be predetermined because it has to occur in order for your arm to move. And your arm is predetermined to move. So your conscious thought must also be predetermined. Well, if your conscious thoughts are predetermined, then you don't have free will on earth. You can't. So, because of that, there can't be a ghost in the machine or a subsistent form animating the body deciding to move your arm, which is free to decide whether to do that or not, regardless of what the predetermined future holds. So superdeterminism disproves the whole notion of ghosts in the machine, or subsistent forms. Now, I guess technically you could still have one, but because it can't actually change anything about your predetermined thoughts or your predetermined body movements, then why would you believe it exists? Because it doesn't actually cause anything to make you think it exists. So you can just brush it off as an unnecessary additional assumption. Um, some may wish to sprinkle magic fairy dust onto their brains that give them the ability to make freely will decisions on Earth. But as I just explained, Dr. Hansen's version of superdeterminism disproves free will on Earth. So it also disproves any magic fairy dust that might give you free will. Um, Now, it's important to understand that superdeterminism and a predetermined universe, a static block reality, which is predetermined, where temporal causation is not real, does not reject the existence of miracles or spiritual experiences. It only says that those are predetermined events. So, yes, they can occur, but they're just predetermined events. So, miracles are simply uh, logically possible but highly improbable events that occur in the universe. And predetermined spiritual experiences are simply the spiritual experiences that you experience. It's just that they're predetermined to occur in the universe. Even though spiritual experiences would have to be located in the manifold of space time in a superdeterministic universe in order for you to experience them, God can certainly uh, place spiritual experiences into the manifold of space time as a means of communicating his will. One does not need any actual disembodied spirit or ghost in the machine in order to have a predetermined spiritual experience. Indeed, our universe is superdeterministic, it is predetermined, and there is no temporal causation. And yet, people have spiritual experiences all the time, uh, even though these spiritual experiences are actually caused by the manifold of space time surrounding them and not by some sort of ghost or subsistent form. Um, we also do not need a ghost to survive death. Death is simply the non appearance of the information necessary for you to consciously exist in the hyperplanes of space time. The experience of death, as opposed to the experience of dying, uh, is no different than our lack of experience of life prior to our birth. So, if you think of the manifold of space time like a flip book, and each of these pages is a hyperplane of space time, and this is the whole universe, let's say, and you exist, you're drawn in these particular pages, then the pages um, prior to your existence are there or were there. Um, you simply weren't in them, so you don't experience it. And the pages that are there or will be there after your death are there, but you don't experience them because you're not drawn in those pages. So this is not a difficult concept to understand. Uh, Death is exactly like existence before you were born. Same thing. So, um, the idea of death in the manifold of space time is not inexplicable. It's something that simply means that you're not there in particular budding hyperplanes of space time in order to experience conscious life. Uh, that's death for you. You're just not there. Now it's interesting. The manifold of space-time is a higher dimensional object consisting of abutting hyperplanes of space-time uh, in a block reality or block universe. And since we only experience the present moment of time, you might wonder, well, where is this manifold hiding? I don't see it anywhere. The reason you don't see it is because you only exist in the hyperplane at this present moment of time. That's all you experience. The other hyperplanes are still there. It's just that your present moment doesn't exist in them. So you don't realize they're there. Now, it's very easy to see how the hyperplanes of space-time do in fact exist. Because all you got to say to yourself is, well, I remember 2 minutes ago, reality existed 2 minutes ago, and I was part of it. Where'd it go? It ceased to exist? No, it didn't cease to exist. It's still there. But that that person who was you 2 minutes ago, he already experienced it. The person that is you now doesn't experience it because you're not in that manifold from 2 minutes ago. So you know the manifold exists because you experienced it 2 minutes ago. And you're going to experience it again 2 minutes in the future. That's the manifold. It's your memory of the manifold, but you have a memory of experiencing the manifold, even though you can't see it at any present or given moment of time. Although you can get clear indications of it through experimental verification of relativistic effects like time dilation. Time dilation is where the scientists have taken two atomic clocks, for instance, put one in an airplane, left one on the ground, took the airplane, flew it in one direction, flew it, came back, landed it, compared the time on the two clocks, and lo and behold, the stationary clock was actually faster than the clock that was flown in the airplane. And we've proven time dilation. So we've proven the existence of this block reality, this Einsteinian block reality that we live in. But you can also experience it because you experience the past and you experience the future. Your own memory tells you it exists. Um, so as far as surviving death goes, you don't survive death in our particular universe. You're not going to be in the manifolds of space time after your death. And you're not going to change it. It's a predetermined future. You're just not going to be there. But that doesn't mean you don't survive death. Because God, being the creator of all physical reality, of all possible universes and special universes, has the power to resurrect your information packet into a new manifold of space time with memories intact, such as a supernatural realm like heaven. So, because you're really just this drawing in a flip book, which is this static block reality we call our universe, that those pictures of you drawn on the edge of the page, that constitutes information. You're actually comprised of information that appears on these manifolds, these hyperplanes of space-time in the manifold. So in that sense, you are an information packet in the space-time manifold. And that information packet can be resurrected in another static block reality without temporal causation, a special one like heaven. So in heaven's static block reality, you could appear again, resurrected. So superdeterminism certainly allows for bodily resurrection. And in fact, if you read the Gospels and you read the stories about Jesus' resurrection from the dead, Jesus appears in bodily form. He even eats with the apostles, and he even denies being a ghost. He allows Thomas to feel his side where his wounds were, to prove he was a solid being. So a solid being like that has a brain too. So Jesus' consciousness in his resurrected bodily form was clearly in his brain, because what else would he have that brain for? So the Gospels do, in fact, support the idea of a resurrected being or soul in the form of an information packet that appears in a static block reality without temporal causation. So Dr. Hansen's proof of superdeterminism and his version of it is perfectly consistent with Christian belief. Um, so I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. Uh, Next time, I'm going to go over chapter 23 of my book, which is entitled The Great Pagan God Killer. All right, everybody, take care.